Hey, good morning. How are you? John Bryan here with the Objective Perspective. This is the second episode of this new show, and I hope you enjoyed the last video. Um, I'll try not to be so belaboring this time, and but I have some very things I want to talk about um, that have been on my mind a lot. Uh, there's been a new surge in the coronavirus. Um, So-called Delta variant has ramped up, and we are now looking at um, measures to so-called combat the virus that make March and April of 2020 pale in comparison. A year and a half ago, when all this started, I was shouted down from every angle on some of the concerns that I raised about the approach to how this virus is um, supposedly to be contained. And if you were to look at this whole situation from about a 10,000 foot view without knowing all the facts, it would look like we were dealing with the, uh, World War Z type of pandemic where everyone's turning into zombies or everybody is dropping like flies, like in the Black Plague. Heck, I mean we've had pandemics and in American history that were deadlier than this. I have ancestors that died in typhoid fever outbreaks, and typhus outbreaks and smallpox outbreaks, and yes, now we have vaccines for those things, but those were viruses that were deadly to just about anybody. If you were lucky enough to survive, then you had an immunity to it, and you were immune for life, and then you were able to help take care of those that had the virus or had the disease of whatever it was. And if you were to look at this whole scenario without knowing the facts and just looking at the response to it, you would think that's the type of pandemic that we were involved in. But if you've lived on planet Earth for the last 18 months, you know that is not the case. Now, the response to it has been very similar to what we would probably see if we had a true pandemic. But we don't have people dropping like flies. We all know the survivability rate of this virus, which is 99.97% that you will survive. And there is an argument, of course, that says, well, we don't know what the long term effects are of survival. Things like heart arrhythmias or long term lung issues or different things like that. And you're right, we don't know. It's only been 18 months since we've been dealing with this. But we've only been dealing with the vaccine for about 8 months. So we know even less about the long term effects of this vaccine. And that's what worries me the most about it is this is a vaccine that has been untested, unproven, and unverified to actually work. Now, there's some anecdotal evidence that says, those that are in the hospital now with this Delta variant are predominantly those that are unvaccinated. And what that probably is a result of is these are people that don't have the antibodies already in their system from either the vaccine or from having contracted the virus at some point, whether they knew it or not. So, it's hard to say for sure that the vaccine is saving lives. It definitely is some evidence that maybe it is. And the reason I named my show the Objective Perspective, which by the way I started as a blog over about a year ago, and not done very good about keeping up with it. It's hard for me to find time to write consistently, although that is what I love to do. So if you haven't already checked it out, go look it up on Facebook, The Objective Perspective. And you can look at some of my past articles that I've written going back to about a year and a half ago or so. But the reason I named it such is because I do truly try to have an objective look at some of the issues that we're dealing with. Obviously, I have an opinion and I have a belief system, and opinions and belief systems, if they're worth anything at all, are hard to shake. But if the person that has those opinions and beliefs are worth anything at all, they're willing to look at a, an opposing view or a new evidence or a new type of thinking in order to see if what they believe and what they know to be true is in fact true. And so, throughout my time as an adult, I've gone through various stages of doing that, where I've really taken the time to look at where I'm at, what I believe, and does it actually hold up against the facts, against the evidence, and against the scriptures. Yeah, and so that's been my motto, and that's been my plan to always do that. I don't usually sit down at a certain time and come up with a new belief system or anything like that, but I do try to make sure that the way I see things is objectively. And so there's a lot of things I say that are opinion, but one has to take their opinion and compare it to the facts, and then weigh out the options on what is true and what is noise. And so that's where I am today. So, talking about the vaccine, there is, like I said earlier, there is undisputable, it's an undisputable fact that the vaccine is still in the experimental phase. We only, well, us common people only knew about COVID-19 in March of 2020. There were some whispers about it maybe in January, February, that it was kind of like, well, there's a new virus that's happening over in China. Maybe it's bad. We don't know yet. Hopefully it won't come over here. President Trump banned all travel from China in order to contain it or to prevent it from reaching our shores. And of course, he was called a racist for doing that. And who knows, by doing that, he may have held off the virus longer than it eventually showed up. But that's, we know when it started roughly. They say it started in December of 2019. So in December of, I guess it was December of 2020 is when we finally had the vaccine approved to begin giving to people. So a full year after COVID-19 was discovered, we have the vaccine. Pretty fast turnaround. So very, very little testing had actually been done when you look at how stringent the testing is for anything else. I mean, heck, we've known about marijuana for thousands of years, and yet they say there's not enough data out there to prove that it actually helps or it does anything like that. But when there's money behind it and someone's getting rich off of a vaccine, they sure find a way to push it out pretty quickly. And that alone is enough to make me kind of smell a rat. But, I've not been very quiet. I've not been as vocal as I should have been, but I've not been quiet about how I've smelled a rat with this whole response to COVID-19. From the beginning, I was concerned about the lockdowns and the mask mandates and the restriction of travel and the paying people to stay home. All things that, I know somebody somewhere thought they were the right thing to do. They probably thought that they were doing in the best interest of the citizens. But, I couldn't help but say it then, and I'll say it again, that these types of things, once they're taken from you, once your freedom to assemble, once your freedom to travel freely, once your freedom to earn a living is restricted or taken away from you, you will not get it back. Not all of it. And in some cases, none of it. And we're seeing that happen today. I do not want to sit and say, I told you so, but the fact of it is, I was warning you a year and a half ago about these things. And what somebody said the other day, I thought it was great. It was a town hall meeting that was held in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, a little town about 2.5 hours northwest of where I live. And the governor there, my governor, Asa Hutchinson, was there doing a town hall about vaccine. And there's not the response that he hoped he'd get. And I'm very proud to say that there's people there that were willing to stand up and call him out for his very authoritarian and, in fact, tyrannical way of dealing with things when it comes to um, the response to COVID-19. Now, he's not been as bad. I'll give him credit. He's not taken things as far as the governor of Michigan did, or the governor of New York, governor of California. He didn't go that far. So I have to give him some credit in saying, well, he wasn't as bad as a tyrant as other governors were. But the way he's handled this whole thing has just been very, well, he's gone around the legislature, which he shouldn't have done. He should have included them. He's not a dictator, but he felt like he needed to throw some weight around, and so his whole response to this has been bad. But he was up there doing a town hall, and the people there stood up to him and shouted him down, and really kind of did the American thing in telling him, we're not going to be told what to do. We're not going to be kicked around and mandated to do what we feel like is wrong for ourselves. And so he didn't like that very well. He actually at one point shushed the crowd, and I thought that was very belittling when he did that. So I'm not happy enough that he will be term limited in 2022, but I hope very much so that an actual quality conservative person that values liberty over party, and values liberty over money, and values liberty over safety, and is willing to stand up for our rights that are given to us by Elohim. So anyway, I digress there, but there was someone in the crowd that said, a lady, and she said, what was a conspiracy 6 months ago is fact today, and it's happening right now. Stuff that we were told 6 months ago, a year ago, was a conspiracy. And the lady's absolutely right. I mean, my goodness, she's right. I mean, the stuff that I was saying a while back that people shouted me down for is coming true today. But I'm grateful also for some people that are willing to stand up for our rights that are given to us by our Creator. And that's kind of what I want to touch on today. Try not to be too far all over the board, but there's this latest round of responses to the containment of the virus is really troubling to me, because people are starting to value mandates and coercion over liberty, and so that's a day I hoped would never come, but we're seeing it happen right here before our very eyes. But there is a piece of legislation that's being introduced right now in the state of Arkansas that is desperately needing to be taken up by the leadership in both houses. Right now, it's at a point where the bill has been drafted, and it's been drafted, but because the legislature is not in session, but they're actually under a special session right now. The leadership in both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, have to agree to take up the bill to be heard. And so we are calling on the leaders in both houses and our representatives and senators to pressure them to take up this bill. This bill is Senate Bill 719 of 2021, and if passed, it will grant individuals immunity from retaliation by their employers for choosing to keep their COVID-19 vaccination status private. Senate Bill 719 is being sponsored by State Senator Bob Ballinger and State Representative Josh Bryant, and co-sponsored by many others from both houses, including my own State Senator, Mark Johnson. HIPAA ensures the privacy of our health information already. So when did it become okay for employers or businesses to discriminate against someone who chooses to keep their vaccination status private? Right now, we are protected by HIPAA. I do not have to tell you what medical conditions I have or what disabilities I have, and what the vaccination status is on the flu or tetanus or whooping cough or anything else. I don't have to tell you anything in order to keep my job. That is against the law for you to coerce me and to force me to disclose that kind of information. But for some reason, your vaccination status for COVID-19 is supposed to be out in the open for everybody to see in order for you to be able to earn a paycheck. It is no longer about whether or not you do your job well. It is no longer about whether or not that you are a loyal employee or whether you're honest or fair or you deal well with customers or you turn a profit for your company or if you are just an all-around good employee. All that matters now is that whether or not you have the vaccine. And that is something that people are seeing happen all over the country, and even right here in Arkansas, where you can be terminated if you do not take the COVID-19 vaccine. So Senate Bill 719 will make it illegal for a business or an employer to require that you disclose that information. Even if you've had the vaccine, you should not be compelled to release that information to anybody unless you choose to. Not once in my life have I ever been asked by an employer to tell them what my vaccination status is or what my health conditions are or anything like that. The only time I've had to do that is for health insurance purposes, if I wanted to purchase health insurance or for life insurance. And that is something that is between me and the insurance company, not my employer. And if my employer finds out that I have a certain disease or a certain illness or a certain disability and they terminate me for that, there are lawyers on standby chomping at the bits and salivating waiting to take up that case because it is open and shut. The employer was wrong and the employee benefits from that bad decision. So why is COVID-19 any different? I'll tell you why it's different. It's because they want to control you. They want to ensure that you comply or else. 6 months ago, a year ago, 18 months ago, I was saying this day was coming, but I didn't see it being this early. You know, it seemed like it would take a while for us to get to the point where they have to actually show your papers to do anything. But I said this, and if you go back, well, if you could go back and record the conversations I've had with people, or if you could go back and scour things that I've said online, you would find that I've said this. Unfortunately, I don't have links for all that. I can't prove that I said this, but I'm telling you, I said that we would have the point where we'd have to show our papers to travel and to assemble and to do things. And I thought it would be farther out because I didn't think we'd have the vaccine this early. But it's here. You know, we were told 2 weeks to flatten the curve early on. And, you know, I understood what they meant by that. And I never really agreed with it, but I understood that what they said, that, you know, if we can just lay low for 2 weeks and let the virus slowly affect us instead of hitting everybody at once, then eventually everybody will get the vaccine, they'll build up immunities to it, and we'll be good. Well, after 2 weeks, it was like, well, we need to do it 3 weeks, and then it's going to be 90 days, and then it's going to be blah, 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 blah. And eventually, here we are a year and a half later, and now we're being told if you don't take the vaccine, if you don't wear a mask indoors, outdoors, in the bathtub, and while in bed at night, then you are part of the problem, and you are causing grannies and children and the neighbor's dog to die. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that we are still having to talk about this with our people, with our neighbors, with people that are reasonable on any other subject until it comes to this. But I knew the way the government and the way people were approaching this virus a year and a half ago, that this was not about containing the virus. Now, they said it was about containing the virus. And the measures they put in place, in theory, sort of kind of maybe made sense. But you cannot tell me that everybody fell into lockstep with this response, believing that these things would work, because they don't. And you look at the history of viruses and you look at the history of illnesses, and telling people when and where they can't go and locking them down and forcing them to wear a piece of paper or a neckerchief over their nose is not saving lives. It is not, and it's been proven. I just saw a graph this week where South Dakota and North Dakota, mind you, they border each other. It's north, south, they share a border. But they have two different types of governors, and they have two different types of responses to the COVID. And North Dakota has a mask mandate, South Dakota does not. And they have seen spikes and they have seen drops almost at the exact same rate. And South Dakota has Sturgis. They have, the big bike rally they just had. And that didn't seem to affect anything one way or the other. They have the exact same up and down graph that their neighbors to the north do. And, we saw similar things here in Arkansas last year with the masks. I mean, when the governor enacted the mask mandate, over the next 2 weeks, cases went up. And when they dropped the mask mandate, cases went down. I don't know what that means. All I know is that tells me, among many other things, that tells me that masks don't work. And so, even, I don't want to get too far on a rabbit trail here, but Dr. Fauci, the illustrious doctor, we all know that he said no one needs to go out and buy a mask. Then he said later that he only said that so people wouldn't go out and buy up all the masks and wouldn't leave enough for the healthcare workers. And then he says you need to wear one. Then he even said maybe two would be what you have to wear. And then it was only children that were children 10 and under didn't have to. But now schools are mandating that all children have to wear a mask in school. And we all know that the virus is tiny. And we know that, it's like sneezing through a chain link fence. Now we also know the virus is carried on water droplets, and the water droplets are big enough to be contained by the mask and all that. But that's only good if you have the virus. Then yes, the mask will contain the virus. If you sneeze, most of that's not going to get out. But if I am not sick and I'm wearing the mask and the virus has sneezed into the air and it's floating around, if it latches onto my fabric, it can get through easily. And so me wearing a mask if I'm healthy doesn't protect me from someone who's not healthy, unless they're carrying it and they're sick and they're not wearing a mask and they sneeze in my face. Then yeah, I'll probably get it. And the fact of it is, though, I haven't missed a day of work for COVID in a year and a half, except for a couple of my coworkers got it, so we took 2 days off in order to sanitize and to lay low, make sure no one else had symptoms. But I've been around people this entire time, and I haven't had it. And maybe Lord's protecting me. Maybe He's letting me get it last. Maybe He's holding off and letting me be the last person to get it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know the answer, and I'm certainly not at the high risk category. But I do have a sleep condition, and I am overweight, and so I have a couple issues that put me in a little bit of higher risk than someone my age who's normally healthy. But I refuse to take the Fauci ouchie. And nobody is going to compel me to do so. And if they want to give me a shot, they're going to have to make sure that it's a lead shot, because they're going to have to do it over my dead body. And you may ask yourself, what in the world makes you say that? Why is it so important that you don't take the shot, that you're willing to die before taking the shot? And the answer is, I will not be compelled to do something that I believe is not right for me and is not right for my family. And if you want to compel me to do something that I believe is wrong, I will fight you for it. That's plain and simple. Now, if you want to persuade me. Talk me into it. But if you try to force me to do it, or if you try to restrict my freedoms in order to make me take it, you're going to have a fight on your hands. You haven't seen the fighter in me yet. I'm a passive guy, and I've never been one to be aggressive. And this is not a threat. I'm not threatening anybody in this world. I don't want to fight. I don't like to fight. I avoid fighting at all costs. But this is a hill I'm going to die on. I will not take the mask mandate any longer, and I will not take the Fauci ouchie. You can take that to the bank. And if I get the virus and I die from it, I will not regret this decision. And I've talked about this with my family, and I've told them, and we all agree on it, that this is something that we will not do. And it seems silly to you that have had the shot. I know it does. I know for people that have taken the vaccine and they are encouraging those to do it, and they talk about how it saves lives, and it's you owe it to your family and this and that. I've heard you, I've listened to you, I've been listening to you since the vaccine came out. I also heard some of you say that you would never take the vaccine because Trump is the one that rolled it out, and therefore you didn't trust it. But now all of a sudden you trust it. And now if you don't take it, then you're a Nazi. And the the Department of Homeland Security issued a graphic in the last day or so talking about the uptick of terrorism that we need to be watching out for leading up to 9/11, the anniversary coming up here in a few weeks. And one of the criteria on that list says people that are anti-vaccine could be considered terrorists. Well, you just heard me. I'm anti this vaccine. And it's not that let me backtrack. I'm not anti this vaccine. If it saves a life, by all means, it's a good thing. But there are people that are dying from this vaccine as well, and you're not hearing much about it. I heard about just the other day, one of the senators here in Arkansas was talking about a young man that testified before his committee that was 18 years old and healthy. He took the vaccine. 3 days later, had a heart attack. 18 years old. Now, he lived, and he's okay, seemingly. And I've known of people that were in the young age, teenagers, young adults, that have had heart attacks and have had heart issues. And I've known some that died at a young age from a heart issue and seemingly healthy. So it is not a guarantee that the vaccine caused this, but it is very suspicious, and that it happened 3 days after getting the vaccine, or 2 days, I think. I can't remember the amount of days, but just a handful of days. And that is something that you cannot overlook. I mean, correlation does not equal causation, but correlation definitely is an opportunity to stop and ponder and see if there's a connection there. And when I look at people across the world that are testifying, saying that they have had complications, either brand new issues or exacerbating the issues they already have after taking the vaccine. Have you seen what Eric Clapton recently posted about his issues? He's 76 years old. He took the vaccine because he was scared. He didn't want to leave his family behind over something that was preventable. And he suffers from neuropathy in his fingers. And he said that the pain that he's been living with for a while ratcheted from a 3, which is tolerable, to an 8 immediately after getting the vaccine. And it hasn't let up yet. He said it lasted for 2 weeks solid. And now he said he has to wear gloves in order to even touch something cold or hot because he'll be in pain for a full day afterwards. Now, I don't give much stock into what celebrities say, because most of them are just trumpeting and parroting what the national media narrative says, or the government, liberal government, is saying. So I don't put much stock in what celebrities harp on about. Most of them, never had a real job, never had to actually scratch out a living, and deal with the issues that real people have to deal with. So I don't give much credit to them. I don't care what they say. But when someone like him comes out and is actually saying the opposite of what the narrative is, what does he have to gain from doing that? Is he paid by the anti-vax lobby? I doubt it. He's fully vaccinated. He took both doses, but he said he went to his doctor and begged him and said if they are rolling out a third virus vaccine, a booster shot, he said, I need you to give me a piece of paper saying that I cannot take that shot. He said, I cannot deal with this anymore. I cannot take on this much pain and agony a third time. Why would he say that if it wasn't true? What does he have to gain from doing that sort of thing? On the flip side of that, you've got that goofball Arnold Schwarzenegger over there saying that screw your freedoms, you need to take the vaccine. Well, you know what, Arnold? And excuse me for saying this, but screw you. And screw people like you who think that you have a say in my personal freedom. You know, I understand that you were born in Austria and your parents may have sympathized with the Nazis. I don't know that. I'm not accusing it. But you know what? I don't care because your attitude, I don't care if you're a Republican or not, your attitude is one of the Nazis. And your attitude is one of the communists and those that want to control the freedoms of free people. And I'm not going to put up with that. And I know you're not in Arkansas and you probably never even heard of this state, but I've heard of you and I've heard of people like you, and we will not comply. And I tell you what, I'm not an anarchist. And if you've watched my last video, I've talked about how I think people, especially those that believe in Elohim, that follow him and follow Messiah, we have a duty to be involved in our government. And I believe that. So I'm not an anarchist, but I am not going to be compelled and guilted and forced to do something that I don't believe is right for me. Leave out, leave out what all's in the vaccine. I mean, you've got aborted fetal tissue, stem cells, and things like that that are in there that I don't believe in, and I will never put those in my body. And by the way, I've never had a vaccine in my life except when I was a young baby, and that was out of my control. So this is not. I'm not anti-COVID vaccine. I'm not a partaker in vaccines in general. So, and I'm not anti-vaxxer either. It's not because I don't trust science or I don't trust vaccines. I just have chosen to leave those things out of my body. I take in enough junk into my body when I eat, and I have to live with those decisions. And this is another decision that I make, and I have to live with it. And if I get sick and die from something that I could have treated myself with a vaccine, then so be it. Just going on along with that, we have, as I mentioned, there's aborted fetal stem cells in most of these vaccines, and they're only made possible because of abortions. And I'm a strong proponent of the pro-life movement and anti-abortion because it is a despicable, godless, abominable practice that we will be judged as a nation for allowing this to continue. And so that's one reason that I will never allow those things into my body. But on top of that, I'm trying to advocate for the pro-life movement. I am told a variety of things that are, I've been told some very nasty things. And one of the things, and you have to pardon me for saying this, is not something I would typically say on a public forum, but, I am often told, stay out of my vagina. You're not, you don't have the right to tell me what goes on in my body. Well, I have to disagree in that regard because it's not your body that we're talking about. It's the one that's living inside of you. But this is my body, and this is my choice on whether or not to take the vaccine. And this is something that I have decided on, and nobody will make me comply. But going back around to the beginning of what we started with here, there is a major push to fire people for refusing the vaccine. And that is a completely un-American and unmoral way of doing things. And I will fight that as long as I can. And that's why I am pushing for my legislators and others in this state to get this bill passed. I won't disclose a lot of information because I don't have permission to do so, but I have a loved one, a family member, who is facing termination right now, today, August 14th, 2021, for refusing the vaccine at their place of business. And they will be terminated because they refuse the vaccine. And this is in the healthcare industry. If anybody should know about HIPAA, it would be them. And they are forcing their employees to disclose their information on whether or not they've been vaccinated so they can determine whether or not they get to keep their job. And they have to submit a waiver for exemption, and they will approve whether or not that waiver stands or whether or not that person will be compelled to take the vaccine or be terminated. And that is absolutely despicable. You are forcing somebody to do something against their will in order to have the honor of staying to work for you. Well, I said it earlier and I'll say it again, screw you. And I'm sorry if that's crass. People are already having a hard time keeping jobs and keeping their bills paid and holding down a job, and people are having a hard time finding people to fill those jobs. And yet you're going to try to turn people away because they don't comply with a vaccine that may or may not work and may or may not actually harm them. Get out of here with that. That is absolutely ridiculous, and Elohim will judge you for that someday. And I know that to be the truth. So why is this such a problem? Why is taking the vaccine, why is being forced to comply a problem with me? Well, all I have to say is because I'm an American and because I value freedom over safety. And you may think that's selfish, and you may think that that is something that is wrong for me to feel that way. And that's fine for you to believe that. But, I am a descendant of men who would not be ruled and women who would not be ruled. And they have left me a legacy of doing what they believe is right and living with the consequences if they're wrong. And that's the way we should all live. That is the life that we should have in this world. And it goes beyond Americanism. This is not just uniquely an American, it's just a human right that we have. And so get that needle away from me. I'm not taking it. And stop trying to force people to take the jab or lose the job. It's wrong, it's abominable, and it's wicked. Until next time, shalom. Peace be with you.